Hey, we're live here. My name is John Spencer, and I am founder of Clear Direction Sales Development. And I was asked several times some of the questions I'm going to try and address today, and I think it'll be applicable to a lot of folks. People ask me all the time, is fractional right for them? And the real question is where you are in your business, what the maturity level is, what you're trying to accomplish. So the question is the CEO still the best salesperson in your company? Um, that's how you have to start as a company. I mean, in fact, I would tell you if you came to me and wanted me to help you, I'd probably say, as a CEO, you got to get your first $1 million, what have you, as the primary seller. That's going to give you a lot of information on product market fit, on how things work together, how pricing works, terms, how to be successful as a company. And so you begin to get traction that way as a CEO, seller, leader type of person. But then what happens is that we're ready to scale or move to the next step. And the question I ask at that point is, how do you know how to find your next customer? How do you know uh, if a deal is going to stall or not? How do you approach discovery? How do you approach pricing, and so forth? And then usually the answer is something along the lines of, "Well, why just know? I've been doing this so long that I just know how it is. I have a feeling for it, a very intuitive way." And so that for me is an indicator already that we've got some at least some documentation that needs to take place. We need to capture how you do things, just not what you do. And of course, now you're thinking oftentimes that I don't need a sales leader or a fractional CRO. What I really need is another seller. I know what to do as a CEO. I'll just hire a seller and then I'll mentor them. I'll provide them with all this conventional wisdoms in my head, and I'll work with them and I'll coach them. And if you will, almost everything you can do to remove yourself from being the CEO visionary of the company, you are going to sit there. Now you're going to be a sales manager as well as a sales leader, as well as a CEO, and I guess everything else needs to be, and so be it. But we find ourselves after we hire these sales folks in these type of scenarios, around the 6 month period latest, things just didn't work out. That's what I hear all the time. Well, it didn't work out. And so when you look at it, it doesn't take that much of a deep dive to perhaps understand why the things didn't work out because the processes were not documented. We didn't clearly define what the job is of that seller, what it meant to do the job well, and then what you pay that seller. And I see this repeatedly. I'll come into an engagement, I'll talk to the sales folks, even in sometimes quite large companies, 10, 20, $30 million companies. And those three conditions don't seem to be met. Somebody gets hired for this job, and almost immediately the job starts shifting, or they're told they have to achieve certain objectives, and then on the fly, those shift either because they've initiated it, the seller's taking things in a different direction in some cases, or the company's needs have shifted, but it's not been documented, it hasn't been agreed to, it hasn't been aligned. And in some cases, I ask people, folks, how are you paid? And I hear, well, I get a variable comp. I ask them to explain that, and they can't. They just have to trust the system's going to take care of them. It's not verifiable. It's not measurable and obtainable. All those things we look for a compensation. Heaven forbid they have a quote unquote bonus. That's really up to the feeling and goodwill of somebody in the organization, but not something they can control. So again, their job description becomes wobbly. What it means to do a good job is wobbly. How they're paid is wobbly. So now we've got a sales problem uh, internally. Now, if all those things aside are set or comfortable, certainly in the first 30 or 60 days, they probably have an idea that that's not a problem. They quickly find out as a new seller in the company to go out and engage, they begin to see weakness in the segments that the company has chosen to serve. But the ideal customer profile is what we call it. Maybe there's a lot of them. Maybe the company has decided that we've sold to somebody, therefore that is an ideal customer. All right. And we see this a lot too. We're all coming to a company, even a small company, 3, 4, $5 million. and they're selling to 5 or 6 or 7 segments, just very broad across the B2B spectrum. And each of those segments um, may have quite substantial variances on how they like to buy, how the client buys, and how our company, the company I'd be representing in this case, your company, um, differentiates itself. What is your unique value proposition within that ideal customer profile? And so all that's got to be tightened. And if you don't know it at the company level, you can expect that the salesperson at best is drowning, but even worse is making stuff up. So maybe not building the brand the way you need to, but certainly it's like running in on sand or in mud. Much better to get all that clear. Who's our ideal customer profile? What's our unique value proposition? What is our pricing strategy? How are we going to market to these folks? What's the responsibility that I, as a seller, have versus the lead generation team or whatever the scenario is? We need to figure that out. Now the seller's into the middle of the role, and we find out that it's not really clear to them what they need to do next. They're going to set up an appointment, but what are they doing to prepare for that appointment? What are the expectations of the company? What tools does the company give them to prepare for a pre-call scenario? What are the stages of the pipeline? If you think about the pipeline of the opportunity, the deal, you know, uh, most deals are won or lost in the discovery phase or stage of a deal, right? And so a lot of work by the company has to go into that discovery. What is necessary to extract from the client, to having those conversations, to provide an accurate and achievable and desirable proposal to the client. Each salesperson is supposed to execute that. They're not supposed to figure all those variables out on their own. They're not like independent, hired guns. I know some people think they are, and they're certainly not just order takers. So we want to guide that process. These are the stages we'll take to be successful. These are the conditions necessary to achieve this stage of a deal, of an opportunity before you move to the next one. And then most importantly, run through the finish line, close the deal, do your follow-ups, close the deal, and what is the stage after the deal's won? So I've seen a lot of people lose a deal after they won the deal because somebody says, "I'll do this." They sign contracts and that, and then they went out of the deal because there's a gap in expectation. So you have to run all the way through the deal until you deliver it. And think of every deal, if I'm, as the closing of a deal is the beginning of a relationship. And so you wouldn't give up. I mean, what you're doing is you're fighting for an opportunity to have an ongoing relationship, even if you're quite transactional business. If you don't have recurring revenue, if you think it's one and done, these folks can operate as referral. You can also land and expand. You might offer new products in the future. You want to come back and revisit them. So you need to make sure you win that process, like good customer satisfaction or customer success. So we're looking at all these things. It's very, very complex. You as a CEO think you've intuitively done this. Truth is, a lot of the CEOs that are selling aren't necessarily sellers, right? That's not the behavioral mix that they have, but they've done it through survival and just through true grit. And that's what I'm getting at. Now you add to the team and you're asking them to grit it out as well. And that might be necessary at first, right? You're trying to get established a new market, new products. You have to get to a certain level that is grit. But in order to scale, and that's another good time to look at fractional CRO, when you're ready to scale, we want to move beyond grit and we want to move to accountability and repeatability. Now we're getting into a process. So we bring somebody in and we onboard them. They understand what's required of them. They understand what success looks like. They understand how they're paid. They understand further how they can use the tools of the company. Just like a normal product development cycle, same thing for a salesperson. Hey, these are things I'm learning in the marketplace. This is the voice of the customer I'm getting. This is some things that we wish the company would provide us to make it better. It could be a technology, so the internal tech stack. So again, we come back to a fractional CRO is a very broad scope. It is not a sales manager. Be very careful about that. If you need a sales manager, a fractional CRO is not a sales manager. All right. For one thing, uh, you're going to get about 20, 25% of our time on average. So it's not something somebody's going to come in and work 60 hours a week. We're not interim or part time. Okay. We're not necessarily cheaper either. And I'll get to that in a minute. But what we do offer is the ability to make sure that everything is comprehensively designed. That process I've spoken about, the engagement with marketing. In fact, in my CR engagements, I make sure marketing is subordinate to me, not because I want to tell them what to do. I want to make sure that I'm protecting them, that it's actually happening, that we're creating a line item on the P&L, that marketing is not optional. I can't be successful as a revenue leader without marketing. We can define what marketing is depending on the segment, the product, and so forth. I'm going to make sure that stuff's happening. So I will take ownership of that because I'll need it to be successful. I'm going to make sure customer satisfaction or customer service is effective. I'm going to make sure that the folks who are not in sales that are engaging with customers, we're going to look at those interactions. That's why it's chief revenue officer, not chief sales officer. The job is not solely to drive sales in a short-term spike. We'll need that too. We want cash flow and sales. Don't get me wrong. But that's a subset. You should have higher expectations for a fractional CRO. Your fractional CRO is, in a lot of cases, I find that I am the first outside executive hired by the company. Usually, these companies have formed, they've developed, the team has developed and grown together, and that's the other leaders. But I'm the first guy to come in from outside, the first person to be brought in as an adult in that room, one on one with the CEO, but also broadly on the leadership team to provide seed level input on that team with an outside perspective. And we all know about the cautions around groupthink. So if you're the team that grew this company, well, there's a lot of instilled knowledge, corporate knowledge, if you will, in the company that can be beneficial largely. It can also hold you back, right? So it's important to have outside input from a different lens. And somebody like myself that's been across many companies, many levels, many maturities, many segments, and so forth. Again, that's what you're paying for is a very experienced, no kidding, chief revenue officer, not somebody who's given themselves a promotion because they went out on their own or something like that. I've seen that model as well. This is somebody like myself will help your company grow if for no other reason it gives you the confidence that the plan you've put together is validated. We'll talk about this either one on one with the group, and we can move very quickly to say, yeah, that sounds great. And have you considered X, Y, and Z? So now coming full circle back, you may not need somebody to lead a sales team, especially if you don't have a lead team. So a fractional CRO doesn't necessarily have to only embed and be the leader of the sales team that may or may not exist, right? Depending on the size of the company. A lot of my engagements are purely advisory. It's helping the CEO and the leaders make the right decisions. They're still doing the work. The next level of that is where we will mutually agree that some infrastructure build needs to take place, or we need to expand the team, or what have you. And I'll take a portion of that. I'll own it with you. So I'm doing it alongside of you. Or maybe you have a sales manager that's ready to go into sales leadership, to move from sales manager to VP of sales or whatever in your organization. But they've never had leadership training. They've had management training. They know how to sell. So maybe there's all of these variables in here where somebody like myself can come in where your organization is, the maturity level, build a scope that's customized for you to make sure that we're addressing the things that you either don't know how to do, don't have time to do, or feel that an outside presence may otherwise bring value. And that's the part I work on is through my discovery with you, customizing the solution and putting together a delivery schedule. If you want things really fast and you want a lot of stuff done, then you need more of my time. If it's something where we can come in and put a plan together, it might start at a smaller engagement and slowly expand. Obviously, as your company grows and we're adding sales team and expanding at some point, it may make sense for you to move from that advisory to working alongside of you to ultimately just owning the sales function. I've done that as well. The tenure and length of a fractional engagement can be broad. Shortest engagements I've ever had would probably be 2 months for a very specific task. The longest has been 34 months. With a portfolio company or family office. I had a couple of those like that, 24 to 34 months, somewhere in there. In one case, we ended up exiting the company. And in the other case, we hired a VP of sales, and I left. And that's the ideal. That's the success rate. This whole thing is designed that I'm not supposed to be a permanent fixture in your company. We're going to elevate somebody. We're going to hire somebody. You're going to exit, whatever the scenario is. But I provide that level of expertise you need that can go any direction you want to. Typically, at least in my case, I don't ask to be on the cap table. So I'm not, unlike another senior executive you hire into the company, probably not going to ask you for equity, right? So that's a concern that a lot of CFOs have, and that's why they hold off on hiring sometimes the expert sales help they need because they don't want to dilute shares or what have you. You don't have that concern with most fractional CROs. Um, it doesn't hurt me if something happens on cash flow and whatever, and you want to pause an engagement, delay an engagement, cancel an engagement as long as we stay within contractual. I want 30 days notice, but it gives you that flexibility. You're not locked into something long term. So there's a lot of practicalities there as well. So we need to get things to be repeatable in order to scale them. And the objective is not ever to take just the founder or the CEO to completely out of the loop, right? Um, it's to it's to take what makes sense away from them so they can focus on being the visionary leader they need to be. And that's what I would say at its best, a fractional C-level officer is giving your company enablement. We're enabling you to break through wherever you are right now from stuck at 3 million or 5 million to finally breaking through to 9 and 10 million, like, because we bring a whole nother level of expertise, taking it from, whatever, double A to triple A or whatever analogies you want to use, um, to give you a higher level of talent and experience instantly. And it's not uncommon to see companies as small as $5 to $10 million have a whole room full of fractional executives, fractional CFO, CMO, CRO, etc. COO. It's very common now to get operators because as we move more into manufacturing, things like that. And so we're used to working together. We need to obviously have clear lanes, just like you would in any business. Some folks use systems. They use EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. They use Scaling Up. They use eMyth, whatever it is. We're used to engaging with that as well, those different systems. We may have biases just through experience with them, but we can work with those as well. So I wanted to take an opportunity to come out and give some folks, y'all, as they say in Texas, a chance to understand a little more about fractional, what it is. Wouldn't go so far as to say what it isn't, because not everybody operates the same way. Not every company has the same needs, but that's the beauty of it, is the ability to scale the engagement and customize with the maturity or size of the company and what you need as a leader. If any of this resonates with you and you want to have a conversation, I have a Calendly. I'll take a 30-minute call with anybody that's a leader of a business anywhere in that leadership. Doesn't have to only be the CEO. I also help on the other side of the line after a deal's been done. As either an operating partner or you can call me a CRO again, fractional CRO. But you think about the investor side of things as well, and folks, sponsors, if you will. where you're missing your thesis and you need to get back on track quick, and you need somebody to come in there and hit it hard and bring a new jolt of energy. That's something we do as well. We can also pull a team together. I'm part of a consortium called Sales Acceleration. There's over 200 advisors here in the US. I can pull together a team that's domain experts if necessary, although typically the domain's not that as important as the tasks we're doing. But whatever you want, we can pull that together, come in, hit your 100-day integration plan. So we have that side. Do that on the privately held side as well. Uh, they just aren't used to uh, that level of change that fast, and we could talk about what that means. Sometimes, it's better to have a 3-year plan to double than it is a 1-year plan, right? Both are possible, but what is the long-term impact, long-term value of the company, those types of things. All right. Well, listen, I wanted to take this opportunity to go out, stream a little bit with some of these thoughts because I see a repeating scenario here with questions. I hope this helps. Let's talk soon. Thank you.